Well, this is Christoph, and today I'm going to tell you the story of sumo. Um, Normally, I was going to call it Japanese sumo, but when I thought about it, it's sort of like referring to baseball as American baseball, and that doesn't really make sense because when people think of baseball, they think of America. They do play baseball in other parts of the world, but what we consider baseball, you think of it as an American sport. Yeah, same way with sumo. Sumo is Japanese. It's from Japan. It started in Japan. It's the national sport of Japan. So I was thinking of calling it Japanese sumo, but that's kind of unnecessary because sumo is Japanese sumo. But just wanted to talk about it today because just recently got into watching sumo. You can get the matches on YouTube. NHK is the Japanese public television service, and they record the matches, and they do a really good job of putting together a compilation video each night their time, which is the morning American time, East Coast time. Um, and you can go on YouTube and watch the matches from the day before. And there's also other YouTubers who do summaries. There's a guy that shows the top five matches of the day before, and he shows them once and then he breaks them down and shows you the moves that the different wrestlers made. But before we talk about that, just want to give you sort of some background on sumo. It is the Japanese national sport, and it really does mix together like sports, athletics with Japanese culture and Japanese religion. It goes back hundreds and hundreds of years, sumo, and it's basically two guys in a ring on a raised platform. And this picture right here is a good picture to give you an idea of what sumo looks like. You got this square made of clay, and there's a ring. They actually use bales of rice hay or straw made from rice that they create, and then they bury it into the clay when they make this raised platform. These tournaments take place in sort of gymnasia and sometimes a dedicated hall for it. But my understanding is when it's not going on, they break down the clay, they take it away, and every time they do have a tournament, they rebuild the clay platform from the ground up. Um, like I said, it's tied in with Japanese culture and Japanese religion. So when they're dedicating the platform, they bury some things. And I'm relatively new to sumo, so I don't know exactly what they bury, but they bury items inside the middle of the ring, and then they have a dedication ceremony where a priest comes to dedicate the ring. Also, before each match, the wrestlers throw salt, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But they also throw salt to purify the ring and keep away evil spirits. So, if you ever watch a sumo match, one of the things they do before they enter the ring is take salt and they throw it in the air, and then they dust their hand off on the belt. But yeah, like I said, sumo is basically two large men wrestling each other, and the rules are very simple. Whoever touches the ground with something other than the bottom of their feet, so anything else, your hand, anything else, or steps outside the circle, loses, right? And if they both step out at the same time, the one that hits the ground first is the one that loses generally. So because it's so simple, the sumo wrestling matches can last a second. Somebody falls down right away or trips or whatever. And the longest one I've seen in watching two tournaments now is about 90 seconds, about a minute and a half. And that generally just happens with two guys push into each other. Basically, they sort of lock up and freeze and don't move for a while. And and then the referee, who wears a nice colorful kimono normally, he encourages them to keep going, and then they start moving again. And normally somebody will win the match. If not, they actually have a water break, and then they start over again. But that's pretty rare. So one thing I like about sumo is that the matches can be really short and just be 1 second long, or like I said, a minute and a half is the longest I've seen. Uh, it's actually a very interesting system because it's different than our sports in America, right? But it's actually older than our sports in America. There's basically the way to I think of the wrestlers is they're ranked in tiers, right? And if you think of European soccer, especially English soccer or German soccer, where football, of course, over there, where you have in England, you have the Champions League, which are the best teams, and then the one sorry Premier League. Premier League are the best teams, and then one rank down in teams are the Champions League. And the way that works, and it works the same way in Germany, for the top tier is if you're a team in Premier League, you have your season, and the worst performing teams in the Premier League slip down into the Champions League. And then when you're playing as a team in Champions League, the best performing teams in Champions League move up into the Premier League. Well, sumo is like that in a sense. Instead of teams, though, it's individual wrestlers, right? Individual sumo wrestlers. So you have there's 6 tiers of sumo, and I think just like English soccer, the very lowest tiers are not paid. But as you sort of get up higher in the ranks, you get into the professional sumo where you actually do at least get room and board, which I'll talk about later. But and at the very top of sumo, you're getting a real salary when you're wrestling. Uh, so you have the wrestlers, you have these 6 tiers, and the one that they broadcast on NHK have the results or have the summary of each night during the tournament is the top tier. And of course, in Japanese, they have their own names for things. And just one reason I wanted to put this video together was that it is difficult for a non-Japanese speaker to figure out sumo in some ways, because if you Google it or if you watch YouTube videos, um, there's not a whole lot of English language descriptions of what's going on and how it works. A lot of the time, you'll find stuff about the diet sumo wrestlers eat because they are very large men. You can say around 400 pounds, although some of them are down to 200, 200, 250 pounds. But they're big guys, and to maintain that kind of body weight, they have to have a very particular diet, and they have a very traditional diet, which is interesting too, which I'll get into. But uh, yeah, talking about the ranks. So the word for the top tier, which is sort of like the English Premier League in soccer, it's called makuuchi. And then when the tier below that is called Juryo, and then there's 4 tiers below Juryo, which I'm not too familiar with because I haven't followed it long enough. But as a sumo wrestler, what you do is you want to have a good tournaments, and as long as you have winning tournaments, you're going to stay where you are, rise. And if you don't have a winning tournament, you can slip down into the lower level of sumo. And when I say having a winning tournament, yeah, that takes some explanation also. So unlike American sports where we have, seasons, we have baseball seasons. I mean, spring training is right now it's March. Spring training's been going on, and then the actual games start for real in April. And then you have baseball going all the way to the World Series in November. But after November, end of November into the winter, the baseball players are not, they're not playing baseball games, right? And same thing with football. You have your season that starts, the preseason starts in August, and then the end of August, the actual regular season football games go on, and that lasts until the Super Bowl, which is in February. So, after the Super Bowl, after February, there's some time off for the players. One big difference with sumo in Japan is that it never stops. And I am now watching the March tournament. Today is day 13 of 15 of the March tournament. And it's the second tournament I've watched. I watched the January tournament this year in 2025, and it just, I think you really need to watch a few tournaments to understand and get sort of under your belt and understand what's going on. But really, it's an interesting lifestyle compared to American athletes because, yeah, it never stops, right? So the way it works is every odd numbered month, so January, March, May, July, September, November, they have the professional tournaments. They have for sure the Makuuchi tournament, which is the highest again, the Premier League, and they have the Juryo tournaments, which is the Champions League, one step down. They're both going on at the same time, and they always start on the second Sunday of those odd numbered months. So this is Friday, and in 2 days will be the 15th day of the tournament of the March tournament. And yeah, and so what happens is for the wrestlers is they have 15 days of tournament, and then they have about 6 weeks off, and it's not really off, and then they have the next tournament, right? So in the life of a professional sumo wrestler, you know, every other month you're spending 15 days competing. Now, sort of on the flip side of that is they each of the professional wrestlers has one match per day, so, you go out there and there's a lot of ritual that before the match starts, but potentially, you could have 1 second a day that you're actually really wrestling, and then the other 23 hours and 59 minutes and 58 seconds or so, you're not. So potentially, you could, you know, how you're not spending a 3 hour game like in football or baseball, right? It's literally 2 minutes a day that they're doing. So it's just a different approach than American sports. As an American, it takes some getting used to, but it's really interesting to watch. Yeah, to me though, the fact that the seasons are every other month, I mean the tournaments are every other month, and that there is no off season other than those 6 weeks in between tournaments is just an interesting lifestyle. But of course, the Japanese sumos or wrestlers are used to it, and that's in the culture, and so that's no big deal to them. Just to talk more about the ranking of the sumo wrestlers. So there is the Japanese Sumo Association, and they run the show. They run the tournaments and they post the results, and they have their webpage here. Of course have to go to the English language one to see it in English. But the um, the top tier wrestlers, like I said, are called the Makuuchi, right? And so you can think of that as again as Premier League. Now, that's divided into sort of two tiers, right? And the way I think of that is when you think of high school sports, you can think of varsity team and a junior varsity team, right? So the and I have to look at my notes here. So the junior varsity team are called Megashira, right? And so that's just the term that they use. And there's 17 Megashira ranks, and there's two wrestlers per rank, right? So up to 34 wrestlers out of 42. A tournament has 42 wrestlers, and there's 34 junior varsity guys in these ranks called Megashira, and they 1 through 17, and there's East and West. I can't remember which is higher. Either East or West is higher than the other, but you have Megashira 1 East, Megashira 1 West, and so on all the way down to make sure 17 East and 17 West. Now, like I said, that's kind of the junior varsity of sumo. Where you want to be is in the top three ranks, and that's called the Sanyaku. And when I say three, it's really four. Looking at my notes here again, Sanyaku means literally means three ranks in Japanese. But there are actually four ranks because the top Sanyaku rank is called Ozeki, and the best of the Ozeki become Yokozuna and talk about the process of becoming Yokozuna because it's a big deal and it's a special thing. You can think of Yokozuna as the king of the hill, the number one guy. Although there can be anywhere from no zeros Yokozuna to up to, and historically there's been at most four Yokozuna at the same time. Talk about them a little bit, but the top ranks, the varsity of the Makuuchi is the Sanyaku. And so the lowest of the Senyaku is Komusubi, and then above that is Sekiwaki. And those are the sort of the junior of the varsity, right? And then the Ozeki is the senior of the varsity, and the top Ozeki are Yokozuna. Now, like I said, with this, you could not only when you move from the Premier League style, the Makuuchi down to Juryo, yeah, you're also moving up and down in these ranks. So I think a week or so before each tournament, the Japanese Sumo Association announces the rankings and which wrestler is going to be in what slot in the rankings. And they like I said, the best guys rise up from Juryo, and the worst performing guys go back down to Juryo from Makuuchi. So what you are trying to do as a sumo wrestler in a tournament is get a winning record, and that's called kachikoshi. That's when you have 8 wins out of 15 days, right? Once you hit 8 wins out of 15 days, it's called kachikoshi, and that's what you want. That's what everybody's striving toward. Obviously, number one is not get hurt, but beyond that, they are striving to get their kachikoshi, right? That's like I said, 8 wins out of 15 days. And when the tournament starts, it's everyone's at zero, right? And so you the way the Japanese Sumo Association works is that they basically rank with like kind of in the beginning, right? They put lower than Megashira with low Megashira, and then they put like the Ozeki and the Sekiwaki and the Kambusi Kamasubi, sorry, with each other, or and try to make it interesting as far as matchups, right? And then as the tournaments go on, they don't announce who's going to fight who until really the day before. And of course, you only fight another wrestler one time. You don't fight somebody more than twice. But not everybody fights everybody because when you think about 42 wrestlers, but 15 days, not every wrestler is going to be able to wrestle every other wrestler. But the Japanese Sumo Association tries to set up the matches, the matchups, especially in the later end of the tournament, to make it interesting and make it so that the best guys are going to wrestle each other no matter what. That's the goal. But yeah, you are trying to get your Kachikoshi, which is 8 wins out of 15. And then if you get that, of course, there's a winner of a tournament. Everybody wants to win the tournament, and there can be only one winner, right? If there is a tie, so if you have two guys that are 12 and 3, and one guy's 12 and 3, and another guy's 12 and 3 on day 15, then you have a playoff where those two just wrestle each other, and whoever wins the that tournament, that match is the tournament champion, right? So in January, this is the first tournament that I watched. There was a three-way tie at the very end, which was very dramatic. And so they drew straws basically, and the eventual winner, Hosho Ryu, wrestled three times. He wrestled his normal match during the day. He wrestled Kinbozan, who was also tied for the the final, had the best record. And then he finally, the last one he wrestled was Oho, and Oho was my favorite in that tournament because he did really well. And but lost to Hosho Ryu in the last match. So Hosho Ryu became the champion of that January tournament. Now, so that means when you get the Kachikoshi, when you have 8 wins out of 15 or more, yeah, getting double digit wins would be great. 10 wins, 5 losses or more is even better. But once you get to the once you get your Kachikoshi, once you got your 8 wins, you're kind of breathe a sigh of relief in a sense, because what happens is you will not go down in rank once you if you have a winning record in the tournament. People have a losing record in the tournament, more than 8 losses, and so it's fewer than 7 wins or fewer, probably will go down in the rankings. And if you're already down in the low Megashira, there's a chance you slip down to Juria, slip down to the Champions League version of sumo. So, just as a wrestler, as a fan of the wrestler, you're hoping that they get their 8 wins because that way they can only do better, right? Like I said, there's one champion, and that's a big deal because there are. I've seen there's some nice YouTubers that cover sumo, and there was in the 1980s there was a sumo yokozuna, which is the highest rank, who never once in his whole career never once won a tournament. And we'll get into that. I'll get into how that works a little bit, but it's extremely rare. I think it's the only time it's happened that he was a yokozuna who never won a tournament, even after he became a yokozuna. Uh, Again, yokozuna is the top guy. Now we have right now, Hosho Ryu became the yokozuna after the January tournament. It was very exciting. We'll talk about that a little more, but if he hadn't become yokozuna, there would have been no yokozuna. The one before him retired. He started competing in the January tournament, and after a few days, realized, I guess, his health wasn't there, his just performance wasn't there. So he decided to retire and called it quits. And so technically, he didn't have his retirement ceremony yet, so he was technically on the books as yokozuna. But if the January tournament did not produce a yokozuna, then sumo would not have any yokozuna right now. And that hasn't been the case since the 1990s. So it's been over 30 years since Japan, since sumo did not have a yokozuna. Now, the way that works is that the Japanese Sumo Association sets its rules, right? And the general rule is they want you to be an Ozeki. They want you to rise to the highest rank in the normal ranks, which is below Yokozuna. But you rise and fall, right? If you do have good tournaments, you rise, rise, rise. If you have a really good tournament, you rise a lot. Again, Japanese Sumo Association decides the rankings. If you have a really bad tournament, you can fall a lot. But what happens is once you're above the Megashire ranks in the Kamasubi Sekawaki, you're making what they call a run for Ozeki. You are going to, try to win tournaments, and there's a certain number of wins that you need to get in two tournaments to be considered for these things. And the rules, of course, are the Sumo Association's rules, so they can bend them and adjust them as they see fit. But once you reach Ozeki, you're then entering what they call the Yokozuna run, right? You want to try to become Yokozuna. Now, like I said, there can be more than one Yokozuna. I think it's been a while since we've had more than one, but the yeah, that's the sort of exciting thing for the fans, right? So our current Yokozuna in sumo is Hosho Ryu. That's his sumo name. That's not his real name. He's from Mongolia. His real name in Mongolian starts with Sugar, Sugar, and it's a long Mongolian name after that, which I can't remember. But Sugar, like I said, his sumo name is Hosho Ryu. Part of that reason his name's that is his uncle was also Asasho Ryu, was a yokozuna before his nephew Hoshoryu, about 15 years ago, and that's an interesting character, and I'll talk about that a little bit, but Hoshoryu is the current yokozuna, and what happened was he won the January tournament, which is the Japanese Sumo Association. In order to become a yokozuna, their general rule is you're an ozeki and you win two tournaments in a row as a ozeki. Now, like I said, they can bend rules. The November tournament, which was the one before January, Hoshoryu did not win it. He was in the final match against a wrestler named Kodazakura, and he slipped. And he slipped and he fell, onto his hands, and then he lost. So because he lost, Kodazakura won that tournament, and people were talking about Kodazakura being, if he won January, Kodazakura, then he could become the next Yokozuna. But he did not do well in January. He had apparently had a knee injury, which no one ever, which he did not disclose to anyone. I see publicly, not to the fans or anything like that, that his knee was hurt. And he had a poor January tournament, Kodazakura. So even though Kodazakura won in November, Hoshoryu, who came in second, and really, I think if you go back and watch the match, if he had not slipped and fallen onto his hands, he might have been able to beat Kodazakura in that fight. He wins January, and for the Sumo Association, that's enough. So, like, almost winning one tournament and winning the next tournament and your current Yokozuna has retired. Okay, that's good enough for the Japanese Sumo Association. So, which is great. Hoshin Ryu is just a really dynamic wrestler. He's very good with technique. He's not overly big. Um, he's fun to watch. Now, turns out in the current tournament, he had tweaked his elbow. He tweaked his right elbow on the day when he wrestled three matches, which is three times, two more matches than you normally would wrestle in a day. He tweaked his elbow, and in the world of sumo, when you're a yokozuna, it's a lot of responsibilities, right? You do this opening ceremony, and I don't. Oh yeah, right here. Well, it's this picture right here of the Sumo Association. That is, I think that's Hoshiryu. I'm not 100% sure, but that belt that he's wearing there, with the lightning bolts hanging off it, that is the Yokozuna belt, and only a Yokozuna wears that belt. And the Yokozuna opens the ceremonies each day and closes them with a whole, elaborate ritualistic, the leg stomping, the kind of what you associate with sumo. The Yokozuna's responsibility is to start each day's tournament and do a lot of other things, but it's the Yokozuna that starts the tournament and the Yokozuna that ends the tournament with a whole ritualistic stomp, and the crowd is happily cheers along with it. Just as an aside, here is a picture of the inside where the matches are held. Down here is the ring, and just interesting to me because in the footage you don't really see the top of the hut here, but this is always hanging above the ring because in the old days, like I said, sumo goes back hundreds and hundreds of years. In the old days, they actually held them in a under a hut like this with four pillars going down. But I think they took out the pillars so people probably would run into them. It's kind of like running into the in football, running into the goalpost at the end of the football, at the football field, and you could hurt yourself. So over time, they removed the pillars and hung these four colored tassels down there to symbolize something in sumo. Again, as I learn more about sumo, I'll learn more about some of the traditions. But coming to this picture here, you can't really see the top piece there, but that is hanging above the ring, and it symbolizes the hut that the matches were held in the old days. Now, I talked about becoming a yokozuna. Basically, you have to be an ozeki, and you have to win two tournaments in a row. And if you don't, then there's no yokozuna if the yokozuna is retired. So they, the Japanese Sumo Association wants a yokozuna at any given time. So Hoshiru, you could argue. Some fans did argue that he didn't quite win. He didn't win two tournaments in a row. He tied for the. He lost the final game of the last tournament, and he won the one after it. So it's like close enough. As I said before, his uncle, Asashoryu, had been the Yokozuna before, Yokozuna before him, and that's just as an aside. That's an interesting character, Asashoryu. They are uh, Sorry, I'm just going through here and looking, but the and yeah, here we go. So in Makiuchi sumo, there is the Sanyaku, like I said, the ranks, Yokozuna, and so on. And here's the page on Yokozuna, right? So this is part of the ceremony. You have one guy holding a sword, and you have I think this is the dew bear or something like that. It's a ritualistic thing, and then the yokozuna does a whole ceremony before the start of the match, right? This is like I said, yokozuna doing the ceremony. But to talk about Hoshiru a little bit, there is going to be there are right now. There have been a total of 74, uh, um, 74 yokozuna total, and they here we go, list of active sumo wrestlers. So there have been 74 total. Hoshiru is the 74th. And what's a little interesting about him is, at least in the old days, was this chart right here shows you the Machiuchi, the current standings, like the varsity that I was talking about here, Yokozuna, then Ozeki, Sekawaki, Komusubi, and then the Megashira 1 through 18, which are sort of the junior varsity of the top league, right? So Hoshiru, like I said, is interesting because he's Mongolian, right? And if you look here, this is the list of all Yokozuna known. Hoshiru is the 74th Yokozuna. And so the first one, it's a little bit of mist of history here because the very first one retired, they think 1649 question mark. Second one retired maybe in 1765. But the third one for sure they know retired in 1749. This is how far back sort of organized sumo goes. It goes back, over 250 years. But he is the third Yokozuna, the guy that retired in 1749. And then it just continued line of Yokozuna all the way down to today. And what's interesting is here you'll notice that, this is before Japan existed, I think, as a country. Yeah, before the Meiji Restoration. But, starting in 1869, you see the Japanese flag here. And all Yokozuna were Japanese, right? Until in the 90s, you do have the the first non-Japanese was an American Yokozuna, started in 1993 and he retired in 2001. And then you had another American, right? So what's interesting is that, until the 90s, all Yokozuna were Japanese. And it was only in the 90s that they started allowing non-Japanese people to start wrestling sumo. Actually, I don't know when they started, but it was pretty recent to them to then, and it was in the 90s that you had your first non-Japanese sumo wrestler become a yokozuna, and that was this guy here, Akabo Tono. He's a big boy, but he started in 1988 and then became yokozuna later on. But anyway, what's interesting is that since the year 2000 or so, yeah, so in 1999 you had Musa Shimaru. He was Japanese American yokozuna, but after that became the first Mongolian. And this is Asa Soryu, the person I talked about, who was Hoshiryu's uncle. Here's Hoshiryu. There he is. He just became yokozuna, but his uncle was the first non. Okay, fine. You have the one American Hawaiian, but then you have the first Mongolian yokozuna, and you look at this. Then you have another Mongolian, a third, another Mongolian, a Japanese yokozuna, another Mongolian, Hoshiru, who's also Mongolian. So interestingly, of the last seven, one, two, three, four, five, six, seven yokozuna, six of them have been Mongolian, which is interesting. Mongolia does have its own form of wrestling called Bak, and Hoshiru, one of his other uncles, brother to Asashoryu, was one of the champions of Bak in Mongolia. So he obviously comes from a family of good wrestlers. But Asashoryu was an interesting cat because he was, like I said, the first Mongolian yokozuna, and he had trouble with the role. I think he faced some racism in that he was not really accepted somebody was not really accepted by the sumo public, but also he didn't make it easy on himself because he would have controversies. He would get in trouble. He one time said he couldn't go to a tournament because he was injured, and then they had video of him back in Mongolia playing soccer in a charity soccer event. So it was like, well, if you're able to play soccer, how come you say you're too injured to be wrestling? Um, and there were a lot of controversies like that for Asashoryu. to the point where he got into a fight outside of a nightclub in Japan. He broke somebody's nose, and the Japanese Sumo Association said, "You're done. You're fired. You're retired. You're done." And so there is some bitterness there. Interestingly, when Hoshiru had his ceremony in January, February this year to become Yokozuna, they had the public ceremony where he got the belt and displayed in public for the first time. When his uncle Asashoryu showed up, the Japanese Sumo Association would not let him sit with the other association members, the other sumo members. Asashoryu had to sit with the public, with the general public. So that kind of shows me and shows anyone that there's definitely some bad blood between Hoshiru's uncle and the rest of the Sumo Association, which is just interesting. But like I said, you need to win two tournaments as an Ozeki to be considered for Yokozuna promotion. That's a one-way street, right? So you can be an Ozeki, and there's many Megashira, a couple of Megashira right now that were Ozeki, and then because for one reason or other didn't have great tournaments and sort of floated back down the ranks into Megashira. That's fine. That's part of sumo, right? But if you become Yokozuna, you are expected to never have less than 8 wins, fewer than 8 wins in a tournament, right? So if you have fewer, basically, if you're on the path to having fewer 8 wins in a tournament, then you either need to withdraw from the tournament for injury, right, or retire. There's no having a losing record if you stay in a tournament as a yokozuna. So there's extra pressure on you to do well because if you don't do well, then you're out. One way that they sort of show like sort of the prestige of being a yokozuna is that if you're a Megashira sumo wrestler and you beat a yokozuna, happened 3 times in this March tournament, you get a special gold star behind you. And I don't know when they display that gold star, but you earn this gold star as a Megashira who has beaten a yokozuna. So, like I said, it's high pressure to be in the Yokozuna, lots of ceremonial stuff, and you have to do well. Like if you don't do well, then you either have to withdraw from the tournament or retire. And of course, then they let you withdraw from the tournaments pretty liberally. The last Yokozuna withdrew from like every other tournament he withdrew from. So and that's fine. That's part of the sport. But you cannot have a losing record as a Yokozuna in a tournament. You have to have at least 8 wins. So our guy Hoshiru, just a really great fun wrestler to watch. If you want to go back and watch the January tournament, NHK has, of course, all on YouTube, all of each day's summary. Just a great wrestler and very good, very intimidating in the ceremonial stuff leading up to the actual wrestling. But he had gone 9 days, and his record was 5-5. I think they counted the fifth day as a loss, and then he withdrew from this tournament. He had hurt his right elbow. He mentioned hurting his right elbow right before the tournament started, so it's a legitimate reason for him to withdraw from the tournament. So everyone's hoping that he can heal up. Next tournament's in May. Again, as an outsider, this seems to be just a crazy schedule to me, where you're 2 weeks on to 6 weeks off, 2 weeks on, 6 weeks off forever until you retire, right? Um, just want to make one note about with the Yokozuna, the salary. So getting into the whole system, I'll start with the Yokozuna now. If you look it up, you can get the numbers. But Yokozuna, the top person in the sport, makes about $250,000 a year, which is great money for an average person. But compared to American sports, a quarter million a year is nothing, especially when you have baseball players who sign 10-year contracts for $700 million right now. That's like 250 times as much money per year as the Yokozuna. It's remarkable that as the top guy, the most you're going to be earning in a year is $250,000. Now, there are sponsorships of matches. What's neat is that this can happen with any match, but what happens is, in the footage that we get the summaries, so we don't see the whole setup for the match. What we see is in the actual wrestling, right? But this is the beginning of the day when they go around. But what happens is, if you see in this picture here, this is the salt, the special salt, and there's a bucket here with the special water and the special paper. There is a lot of ritualistic things that happen before every match that they don't show on the broadcasts that we see on YouTube. Of course, it happens, and they have a live broadcast of the Makuuchi, the top guys in Japan, where you see the whole thing. But unless you're seeing it live, which you can't get in the US, you'd have to get some YouTuber recording the live footage and then putting a video together. You don't see the ceremonial buildup. As an aside, there, the part of the ceremonial buildup is you go up. You show that you're not carrying any weapons. That's one reason why they wear. Well, that's one reason why they wear the belt, and the belt is called the mawashi. The mawashi, the belt, is a 30-foot long piece of fabric that they, when they're getting ready for the match, that they put on and wrap it around yourselves enough times that you can get 30 feet of fabric into a belt. Traditionally, that was to show that you were not carrying any weapons, and yeah, that's the traditional outfit. Also, and it's hard to see in this picture, but everyone has the long hair, so they have long enough hair, and they grow it long enough so they can fold it and have a sort of mini ponytail, and it comes in. It's supposed to look like a lotus leaf or something like a lotus leaf. That's what that's supposed to look like, the hair. Yeah, that's the look for a sumo wrestler. You I'll get to the kind of the rules about what you can and can't do as far as like well, I say it now. You can't bite. You can't try to break somebody's fingers. You can't interlock your fingers with the other wrestler. You can't pull hair. You can't poke somebody's eyes. You can slap somebody, but you can't box somebody's ears in both at the same time. You can push up into the neck, which is a popular move. It's kind of the logical things about what you can't do in a wrestling match. But the official reason from the old days on why you're wearing just the belt is that you're showing you have no weapons, and then as part of the ceremony in the beginning, I think it's also to show that you're not armed with any weapons, which of course nowadays nobody is. But going back to the 1700s, 1600s, who knows what the rules were back then? And of course they had to say no weapons in the sumo match, right? So what they do is, and again, I haven't seen it that much because it's not on the normal broadcast, but there's special water in this bucket, and they have a ladle, but they don't drink it. You put the water in your mouth, and I guess you spit it back out. It's because of special water. And then on top of here, you can see there's special paper as well. And so you wipe your mouth off with the special paper, and then you grab a handful of salt and you toss it in the ring ahead of you, and that's to ward off evil spirits. And then you pat your hand on your belt, and that's where our guy Hoshiru is a lot of fun to watch because he really has a menacing pat on his belt when he looks at the other guy, and makes you nervous. I think that's another neat thing about sumo. Uh, they want you to be stoic. The fans, the culture of it, where if you win or lose, you don't get excited. You might have one like frown on your face if you lose, or I've never seen a smile on their faces if they win. In the interview, when they're off the ring, then they can be really smiley, but you are supposed to like not show any emotion when you're up there as a wrestler. Um, there's a really good Netflix show, and that's how my sister, who got me into sumo, how she and her husband got into sumo. It's called Sanctuary on Netflix. Good show. There is some bloody graphic part about halfway through the season. It's a season, one season, and my big complaint about it is it ends on a cliffhanger, which I never liked for a TV show, and I don't think it was ever renewed. So we don't know what happens. It ends in the middle of a sumo match. The show. You don't find out who won the match, which is annoying to me a bit. But that's Netflix's creative decision. That's a really good show because it shows you the life of a sumo wrestler. I want to talk about that a little bit. When you become a professional sumo wrestler, you live with the other wrestlers in your stable. They use the word stable, it's sort of kind of analogy, two horses in a stable, but you all live together in a stable from like the lowest ranked guys in the six ranks, you can have really low ranked guys all the way up to the Yokozuna if you have it in your stable. But you practice every day. I guess maybe you have weekends off, maybe, but every day, and you get up and practice. And what they do for practice is remarkable. That, like I said, the show Sanctuary shows it, and you can see it on YouTube also. But when they lift the legs and come down, lift the legs, come down the other way, they want you to spend a 1 hour doing that before you start the rest of your practice. So you're supposed to spend an hour just doing the leg stomp and getting your leg strength really, really high as a start to your wrestling practice day. But you have one of these in your stable. You have one of these setups here with the clay floor, and normally it's in a room with walls around it. It's not raised up like this, like at a tournament. But you just spend your day, maybe lifting some weights, pushing each other around. But everybody lives at the stable. and you sleep together in a room with the other wrestlers. There's a kitchen there, and they cook up the traditional food for each other, and it's a very hierarchical sort of system, right? So basically, the younger wrestlers can be hazed if you see the show, or there's been some scandals in sumo the past couple of years, but they get treated kind of poorly sometimes by the more senior wrestlers, but um, everybody's ideally trying to get you as become as good a wrestler as you can, and they sort of all pull together. But you live together as a sumo wrestler, as a professional sumo wrestler. You live together in the stable with your fellow wrestlers, right? You live there. Um, it's only when you get to the Ozeki level that you can get your own. I think Ozeki is where you get your own apartment, and you can get, I think, two attendants, like a butler basically. And then when you're Yokozuna, you get seven attendants, right? Seven. You get seven people working for you directly, and the Sumo Association takes care of all this. So not only do you have the salary, but you have the seven attendants. That's probably a cook. I don't know what the seven attendants do, but that's the story, that you get a seven attendants when you're a Yokozuna, and two when you're an Ozeki, and zero when you're Sekiwaki or below, right? But yeah, so that's on top of the salary. Once you get those high levels, that's some of the perks. Now, what's interesting is at the end of a match, the referee, who is always wearing the very colorful kimono, as you can see in the picture here, he has a paddle in his hand. You can't see in this picture, but what he does is when you win, you can, if that match was sponsored, you can win money, right? And you actually get the money directly at the end of the match in envelopes, in white envelopes. And I don't know, there's a lot of white. They don't put them all in one white envelope. They have a certain amount of money in one envelope, and then they add a second envelope with an amount of money in it. So you can have a stack of envelopes that high if it's a high ranking match. Found out recently that that comes from sponsorships, right? So before the match, somebody walks around the ring here, actually a procession of people, like six people, eight people, something like that, and they're carrying banners that have the Japanese text on it that's advertising something. It's telling you who the sponsor of this match was, which, you know, just like sponsors in American sports, have their reasons, but the sponsor, they walk around before the match with their signs. Now, again, since we're watching the 27-minute compilations put together by NHK of each day's sumo, we don't really see the sponsorship stuff either. The only time we see it as American fans is when they show you some numbers about where the tournament is. You'll see in the background that you can see the sponsors walking around. So a particular match might have zero sponsors, no sponsors. So the sumo wrestler just wins in that city. The referee says you won, and then the sumo wrestler goes back to the locker room. If there are a bunch of sponsors, it's interesting what they do. So they take half the money that the wrestler would win, they put it into a retirement account for the wrestler, which I think is a good idea because they're forcing half the winnings to be put into an account. And then the stack of envelopes you see that get handed to the wrestler by the referee is the other half of the sponsorship money. But I did not know that watching my first tournament. And that's where because why is it sometimes some matches have no money and winnings, and sometimes you have a lot of winnings, and that directly is the sponsorship gets paid directly to the winner of the match, which is interesting. And what they do is they go like this: they go left, right. This cutting motion is supposed to represent three different gods that you're thanking as you accept the money, and you hand it to one attendant and go back to the locker room. But yeah, the life of a sumo wrestler is interesting, and you do earn that money as the in Makuuchi, in the Sanyaku top tier, you do get a salary. You don't get much I think, certainly in Juryo, if you get anything, it's not much. You basically get room and board. You live, they pay for your food. You don't have to pay rent, but you're basically trying to rise to the ranks as best you can. Um, Talked a lot here about sumo. Just want to note that my guy who did really well in the January tournament did not do well in the March tournament. He had a losing record. The other guy that was in the three-way playoff was Kinbozan, Tajikistan, I think. I could be wrong, but he's from one of the stands. He's not Japanese. He did really well. He was in the three-way tie in January. He had a losing tournament. And Hosha Ryu, who won the January tournament, withdrew after 10. He was 5-5, and he withdrew for injury. So he did not have a good March tournament. So, we're in the exciting part of the tournament right now. And if you go to the Japanese Sumo Association, we have this guy Takayasu, which is great. Going here, you can see the different people and their information. He is right now after day 13. He is 11-2. So if he wins both, he's guaranteed to win the tournament. And if he loses, and so Onosato, who's chasing him for it, um, if he wins both, he'd have 12. And if Takayasu loses one, he'd also have 12, and they'd have a playoff. But if Takayasu can win in the next 2 days, he's won the whole thing. You can go on these and see the wrestler information. He's an interesting looking guy because he's born 1990, so he's 35, which is a little bit older. Some of these sumo wrestlers are only 20, and moving their way up. I like his Charlie Chaplin. This is their ceremonial garb. I don't know the name of this, but this is what they wear. If you see here in this right here, this is what they wear. In the beginning of the day, they come out to the ring and do their ceremonial piece, and then go back to the locker room and change. Well, they're wearing the mawashi already, but they take off. I think it looks like an apron. I don't know the official name of it, but yeah, he has a Charlie Chaplin one here. Interesting. Anyway, so he is the current leader, and he was somewhere they sometimes show their highest rank. He was higher ranking than Megashira, but he slipped down the rankings. Anasato is an Ozeki, right? So he has a special interest in trying to win this tournament because if he wins this tournament, that means if he wins the next tournament, he wins the May tournament, he would be in line for Yokozuna promotion. As an Ozeki, winning 2 tournaments in a row is the minimum requirement for becoming Yokozuna. Now, again, Japanese Sumo Association, they make their own rules. They could deny somebody that. But you know, yeah, that's his motivation to win is because he wants to, he eventually become Yokozuna. What's neat here is his name's Anasato, but his real name is Daiki Nakamura, right? So it does show you their actual, real names, and sometimes the real name is the ring name too, right? Like Takayasu, is named Akira Takayasu, so Takayasu is his real name, but Anasato is not. His real name is not Anasato; it is Daiki Nakamura. It's and the names mean things. So the names, especially the name that you're not born with, is has meanings. So here, for example, Tucker Fuji, he's near the Mount Fuji, and there's other things like that have to do with your stable names. Guy I really like right now, my guy Oho, who has a losing record. He's not going to have he's an eight and so eight and whatever. He is right now a let's see, Sekiwaki. And if he does really well, he might slip down one rank to Komusubi. He's still in the varsity, but the lowest rank, he's in the second lowest, one below Zeki. But if he doesn't do, depending on how things go, he might go down to Megashira, which is whatever. It is what it is. You got to win tournaments in order to do well. The guy I'm really excited about is Io Nishiki. He is Ukrainian, and it's interesting. Ukraine has a special relationship with sumo. One of the greatest sumo wrestlers of all time, I think from the 1940s, was half Ukrainian, Japanese mother, Ukrainian father. And so, one of the greatest Yokozuna of all time was half Ukrainian. But right now, Iron Ishiki, he's a great story. I just want to tell the story of Iron Ishiki. Of course, his real name is Danilo Yakovich, and he's Ukrainian. He's from Ukraine. So this guy, his birthday is in 2004, right? So in 2020, 2021, he took place in the under 18 World Championships for sumo, right? So he did very well. He competed very well, and he made friends. He met people from Japan in competing in the World Juniors, the under 18s. And then when Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, he was actually had he was 17 still. He fled to Germany right away, and then reached out to a friend of his in Japan that he had met at the World Junior Sumo Junior tournament, and said, "Hey, can I come to Japan?" And his friend said yes. So in around 2022, he moved to Japan, and started wrestling there. I've heard his interviews. I mean, I don't speak Japanese, but he sounds like his Japanese is pretty good when he's talking to the interviewer. But he down here, what's great about this page is it shows you all of his tournaments, right? And I just thought, like I said, I really like Io Nishiki, Danielo, because he is a shooting star, right? So if you notice, they show you in 2023 November, it took him that long to get good enough to start in the ranks. So he was in Jonakuchi, number 14. He went 7-0, right? He rose into the next rank, Jonadan. He was number 10. He went 7-0, right? So then he rose in the next rank. He was Sandane, number 18. He went 6-1, which put him up into the third highest rank, which he spent 3 tournaments. He went 6-1, 6-1, 6-1. But he was Makushita, number 40, then number 17, and number 4, right? Then last November, he landed in Jurio. He went 10-5, which is remarkable. That's really good. And then in a January tournament, he went 12-3 in Jurio, and that catapulted him up into the Makuuchi, which is the senior ranks. So he's done remarkably well in every single tournament he's fought. And now he's in Megashira, and boom, if you want to get your 8 wins as a rookie, having a winning record is amazing. And he's already 9-4 for the current tournament, and 2 days left. He lost today to Daisho. Takara Fuji is one of the front runners for the whole thing, right? So Japanese Sumo Association has a bit of a they want it's going to be tough for Io Nishiki because this guy's been doing really well this tournament. Right now in the tournament, he is 9-4 also. They're both 9-4. So they pitted him against somebody who's doing very well. He's only 25 years old, which I think is remarkable when looking at. He looks older than 25 to me when you see him out on the wrestling, but he has a nice purple mawashi. He's a cool. He's very tan. He's a really tan guy with a purple mawashi, and right now he's a really really big black eye in his left eye from one of the early matches. It just is an interesting look to him. But tomorrow, Saturday, Io Nishiki will wrestle Tucker Fuji. Now, he's proved himself. I mean, he is Io Nishiki, like getting 8 wins is just great. And he's at 9 wins with 2 more matches to go. If he gets double digits, that'd be amazing for a rookie. And like I said, he just rose like a rocket through the ranks and is now at top rank guy. He just turned actually no. On Sunday he turns 21. So he's 20 years old. He's about to turn 21 on Sunday. And he's from Ukraine and just has a remarkable story and he's doing really well. What I like about Aaron Nishiki is he has a really interesting style. And one thing my sister pointed out to me, and it's very true. I talked about the stoicism, how you're supposed to sit and not be too uh, not show much emotion. Well, you also want to wrestle your style of sumo. Very important that you do not wrestle someone else's style of sumo, right? And he definitely has his own style of sumo. What he does is when they go off the when they first start and when they glide into each other, it's called the tachiai. I think it was touching. It's probably a different word in Japanese, but it's called tachiai. When they smack into each other, what he does is he puts his head into his opponent's chest and uses his strength and his legs to push. And he's also, of course, he's a thruster. There's different types of styles. There's pusher thrusters. You're basically trying to push the other guy out of the ring. There's guys that focus on grabbing the belt and flipping people or tripping them or picking them up and lifting them out of the ring. But Io Nishiki kind of basically is a pusher thruster. I don't know what Migi Yotsu and Yori mean, but those are his signature maneuvers, Migi Yotsu and Yori. But what he does is he puts his head down and he's pushing at you to try to push you out of the ring, right? Of course, the natural reaction to the other guy is going to push down on the back of his head to try to make him fall down. Well, he has an extremely strong middle core and extremely strong legs, and he knows you're going to do that. So he can withstand that push from above, and then he starts moving into once he gets pushed from above, then he grabs the belt. So he has a really cool style of sumo where he smacks in your chest, he's pushing you out. If he doesn't win right away, and they start pushing down, and then he grabs your belt and he starts doing the different techniques to flip people and twist people, and he's really really great to watch, and I just like his story, and highly recommend Aaron Nishiki. Well, I think I'm going to wrap things up here for now. I want to thank you for listening to my description of sumo, aka Japanese sumo. NHK, go on YouTube, and you can find The tournaments you can find. It's always a 27-minute summary or compilation of the day before. It's interesting because NHK is great. They're the Japanese public broadcaster, like I said, and they film it. They film it every day. They have a team that edits the 27-minute video every day. So that's all every 15 days in a row. You can find that on their website. Interestingly, their YouTube team at NHK does not work on weekends, right? So while you can find in the morning our time, around 5 a.m. our time is 5 p.m. the next day in Japan. So that's when it ends and they edit it. So by like 6, 7 a.m. our time, they upload the video. They don't work on weekends, NHK's YouTube team. So you don't get the weekend events until Monday. You can always go to NHK's website and watch the videos from their website. But yeah, so we're exciting run here. Yeah, I really highly recommend though go and Google NHK Sumo and get into the tournaments. We're almost at the end of the March 2025 tournament, but in 6 weeks in May, second Sunday in May will be the May 2025 tournament. And we'll have all new rankings, and who knows what will happen. But I really want to thank you for listening. And someone asks, is that a true story? I say it's true that it's a story. Thank you for listening and have a good day.